This is my week 6 presentation regarding human and drug trafficking. To start off, drug and human trafficking are two of the most pressing transnational crimes in the world today. And these illegal activities span across nationally and through the borders. It involves kind of a complex network of organized crime that it kind of exploits technology, transportation, and communication to facilitate their operations. Trafficking, which generates billions and billions of dollars each year, it involves the product of illegal distribution and sale of narcotics, causing a very widespread harm to individuals in society. And then similarly, we have human trafficking, which involves the exploitation of forced labor, sex trafficking, and other forms of abuse, victims millions worldwide, with devastating social, psychological, and economic consequences. Both of these thrive in the absence of effective international cooperation and legal frameworks, making them a lot more difficult to combat. So as these crimes continue to grow, it is very important for nations to strengthen collaborative efforts and share their intelligence that they have on these subjects and implement comprehensive strategies to address the global impact of drug and human trafficking. So I just listed this, and as you can see there, it shows the distribution of drug types that are most common, with methamphetamine being at 47.5%, and then cocaine just following at 18.9%. But a little bit more I found on this was 83.6% of individuals sentenced for drug trafficking were men. 43.5% were Hispanic, 27.6% were black, and the 25.8% were white, and I believe around 3% were any other races. And their average age was kind of caught me by surprise because it was 38 years old. I thought it would be a bit younger. 81.9% were United States citizens, so I guess that kind of just shows the capitalist system that we have here and how people are desperate for money. 42.5% had little or no prior criminal history. So 5.6% were career offenders. So next we have this regarding human trafficking. So according to the CTTC global synthetic data set, sexual exploitation is the predominant type of exploitation. Although in the last decade, the rise in registered cases, as you can see, of forced labor could suggest either an increased amount of evidence, incidents, or identification and efforts beyond sexual exploitation. So the share of identified cases for trafficking and forced labor increased between 2007 and 2014, and it actually declined a good bit around COVID, so I'm not sure if it was particularly because of the pandemic or any other reasons, but due to the hidden nature of human trafficking, and because CTTC data were only available where partners are operating. So taking a look at how we explore human trafficking as a transnational crime. So there are many different forms of human trafficking. So we have sex trafficking, which is coercion into commercial sex acts. Then we have labor trafficking, which is forced work. It could be in agriculture, construction, and domestic work. Child trafficking, which is awful. So that is the exploitation of children for labor, sex, or other illegal activities. And then we also have organ trafficking, which is the illegal trade of human organs, which I have not really heard much about, so I'm going to have to look more into it. But transnational nature of human trafficking is involved by the cross-border movement. So victims are trafficked between countries, like as they're entering one country from the next. There also could be it through complex networks, So it involves international criminal syndicates operating across borders. Could be the exploitation of migrants who are seeking opportunities and are very vulnerable to human trafficking. And then the legal jurisdictional challenges. So multiple legal systems complicate investigations. The global demand as well for international markets for cheap labor and sexual services drive the trafficking process. And then lastly, treaties like the Palermo Protocol aim to unite countries against trafficking. So that is the international collaboration. So some global responses that we've seen so far is that countries must have anti-trafficking laws and better enforcement. They also need to share information and conduct joint investigations. They also can provide legal care, aid, and rehabilitation for survivors if is essential. So now we are looking at drug trafficking. So there are some different forms of drug trafficking like production, smuggling, distribution, and sale. Excuse me. We also have the cross-border movement. Drugs move from production regions to global consumer markets. So cocaine from Colombia to the United States and Europe. Smuggling methods include hidden compartments, tunnels, and different routes. And then we also have global cartels, which we all know about. Transnational organizations, so like the cartel, manage production, distribution, and sales across multiple countries. These networks are using very advanced technology, corruption, and bribery to operate worldwide. We also have jurisdictional challenges. Their varying laws and penalties across countries complicate efforts to combat trafficking. So prosecution is difficult as drugs pass through multiple jurisdictions with different legal systems. So it's harder to compare like Europe's governing system to America's. But we also have international cooperation. So treaties like the UN Narcotic Drugs Convention and the 1988 UN Convention help unite countries against drug trafficking. The global law enforcement agencies also collaborate on intelligence sharing and joint opportunities. So drug trafficking is a very global and transnational issue, which involves cross-border networks, varying in high demand in consumer markets. It also requires international cooperation, stronger legal frameworks, and coordinate enforcement efforts. So here are some key ways to collaborate through fighting human trafficking. The international cooperation between governments has the bilateral and multilateral functions and agreements. So countries collaborate through agreements such as the Palermo Protocol, which aims to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in people. This protocol encourages government to work together to improve laws, law enforcement, and victim protection. They also work together to remove traffickers and ensure they face prosecution, even when they operate in a different country, which I think is super important. Many countries also create joint task forces to investigate and dismantle human trafficking rights, and they share intelligence and resources to target cross-border trafficking operations. Through the UN, there's the works to support countries in addressing human trafficking through policy guidance, funding, and advocacy. They also have UNICEF, which works specifically on the program of protecting children from trafficking and advocating for the rights and providing humanitarian assistance. We also have the non-governmental organizations such as the International Justice Mission. They play a significant role in providing victim support, raising awareness, and lobbying governments to take stronger action. We also have the Law Enforcement Corporation. They are the Interpol, which facilitates like a global law enforcement collaboration, providing a platform for sharing intelligence, issuing alerts, and coordinating investigations into human trafficking networks. We also have private sector partnerships, which social media platforms, tech companies, and financial institutions are working directly to dispute trafficking. Facebook has partnered with organizations to identify ads related to trafficking, and PayPal works to stop illegal financial transactions linked to trafficking activities. So when we're looking at drug trafficking, kind of a similar approach. They have bilateral and multilateral agreements. So there's countries collaborate through treaties and agreements to strengthen efforts against drug trafficking. Notable agreements include the Single Convention on Narcotics and the UN Convention Against Illicit Traffic. They also have the role of international organizations, just like the UN and the World Customs Organization, which helps improve the capacity of customs authorities worldwide to detect drug shipments. The DEA closely works with law enforcement agencies around the world, including Mexico's federal police. Then there's private sectors, financial institutions, which monitor the suspicious financial transactions and let people know if they think something is fishy. So fighting human trafficking and holding perpetrators accountability presents significant challenges to the criminal justice system. The cross-border nature of trafficking complicates jurisdictional matters, as traffickers and victims often span multiple countries with different legal frameworks. So this makes it hard for law enforcement to identify them. Many victims are so further hindered by trauma and distinct authorities. Moreover, law enforcement agencies often lack the necessary resources and specialized training to identify, investigate, and prosecute human trafficking cases effectively. So victims are sometimes treated as criminals, so it makes it hard for them to come forward, particularly when involved in such sex work, immigration violations, or discouraging them from seeking help. So the lack of sufficient victim support services including shelter, Medicare, and psychological assistance, it kind of perpetuates the cycle of exploitation. Traffickers also go to great lengths to conceal evidence and intimidate witnesses, hindering successful prosecutions. And when we're looking at drug trafficking, this holds individuals accountable, which presents kind of like a significant challenge for the criminal justice system. The global transnational nature of drug trafficking operates make it difficultly to effectively target and dismantle these networks. So one of the major challenges is the jurisdictional system, as drug trafficking often crosses borders involving multiple countries with different legal systems, enforcement practices, and priorities. This creates complications when trying to coordinate investigations. There's also a lack of resources for law enforcement agencies, as fighting drug trafficking requires significant financial investment. There's demand for illicit drugs through supply chain, and makes it difficult to eradicate trafficking altogether. So we have some existing policies to fight transnational drug and human trafficking. So the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime is international treaty aimed to combat transnational organized crime, including how it encourages international cooperation, multi-legal assistance, and the development of national policies to combat trafficking. However, it does establish a framework for cooperation, so if it lacks the enforcement mechanisms, it leads to inconsistent implementation. There's also the U.S. Trafficking Victims Protection Act, so it was aimed at combating human trafficking, and it provides comprehensive tools for victim assistance, law enforcement, and prosecution of traffickers. So the con for that is that they focus more on criminalization than on prevention, on rehabilitation for victims, and the lack of resources is also unhelpful because they have to be very financially invested in it. And then there's the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. So they support countries in enhancing their legal frameworks and improving the capacity of criminal justice systems to fight human trafficking. So this encourages regional cooperation and provides technical assistance and training to law enforcement. But it faces challenges in international policy, especially where trafficking laws are either weak or not properly enforced. Here are some citations.